Episode 176, The Stern No. Ooh, a little word like no can bring up such strong feelings. And this week, I want us to step away from our feelings and have an objective conversation about what it means to use a stern no. This is the Creating Great Grooming Dog Show. I'm Chrissy Neumeyer-Smith. I'm a master groomer behavior specialist. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, an instructor at Whole Pet Grooming Academy, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the show where grooming and training meet. So I want to talk about the stern no. I think that many of us were taught to respond to a dog's behavior problem, a behavior we do not wish to see anymore, by giving a stern no. And what I mean by that, it's usually sort of like, no. And maybe we hold their chin hair or hold their nose or hold their paw and we're just very stern and no. And many of us were taught that way. I was taught that way. Okay, so I'm going to be totally upfront that I have done this an awful lot. Now, it brings about lots of emotions and it's very polarizing, which is kind of strange because you would think, well, it doesn't really hurt the dog, right? On one side, I think we have thoughts like he can't think it's okay. That behavior was unacceptable. We have to do something. It doesn't hurt him. What's the big deal? Why are people so wishy-washy about the word no? Okay, I hear you. I feel for you. And we're going to address all these issues. So that's one side of the debate. Now, the other side of the debate is that, well, it would be mean. It's so negative. Why would we do that? It's such a negative thing to do when we want them to be happy all the time. And I feel for you also. I hear you. Now, here are some things that we might hear also. I think that sometimes people say, well, this is probably what they're using at home. At home, they're probably hearing no. So doesn't it make sense for us to use a tool like that? The owners say no. Maybe you think that the problem with this dog is that no one at home does say no. I hear that one a lot too. This dog is spoiled or untrained, naughty. This is often where terms like fur baby and fur mommy get thrown around in a negative way, that this dog just needs to understand no. And as a dog trainer, I can tell you, gosh, so many owners contact dog trainers and they're like, the first thing they write on their list is he needs to know what no means. But here is the thing about the stern no, is that what we're actually doing is we're trying to tell a dog that I am not pleased with that. But let me ask you, as a groomer, if you are grooming a dog and their behavior is something you do not want, if we just jump directly to no, I said no, let me ask you, have you ever seen a behavior improve? You might see them stop trying to bite you. They might even stop wiggling. But does that ever lead to a dog who feels like, oh, you're so nice, I'm safe here? And does it address the underlying issue? Why is this dog behaving this way? Why does this dog have an issue with it? What caused that behavior? We have to ask why. Why is the dog doing it? So I think it's really important for most of us to circle back and go, what is my purpose for a stern no? If that's something you're still doing, what is its purpose? I'm going to say I very rarely turn to a stern no. And when I do, it's a knee-jerk reaction, an old habit that crops up. And every time it has happened, my husband's been right there going, thought we don't use no. Because he'll catch me every time. But it's not because I feel like it's going to hurt the dog's feelings. Okay, that's where we need to talk about the opposite side of the debate that thinks it's negative and it's wrong and it's hurtful or harmful. I don't really believe that. I really don't think that it's going to hurt a dog or harm a dog. I don't think it's going to make them, injured in some way. But let's talk about when we see a behavior that we don't want, that we want to disrupt, we want to decrease, right? We have to ask, why is the dog doing it? Why? And in so many cases, and I know I've said it before and I'll say it again, in so many cases, the problem that dogs have with dog grooming is different than the problem they have in other areas of their life. Okay, the problem with dog grooming is that they find it unpleasant, uncomfortable, and or scary. And uncomfortable could be as far as it could hurt. Now, non-groomers are out there going, what? Does that mean groomers hurt our dog? What I'm saying is that if a dog is really sore and we are grooming them, they are still sore the whole time, and we're asking them to do an awful lot. Sometimes pain is involved with grooming, and we try to minimize that, and we try to work around it. But I'll tell you what, your 18-year-old dog with bad knees who still gets groomed because he still has grooming needs is probably experiencing discomfort and or pain through their grooming. I know that's a lot to take in. Everybody take a deep breath. Oh boy. Yeah. Yep. She said it. She said it. Some of these dogs are experiencing some sort of discomfort or pain due to age, due to health problems, due to joint problems, mobility issues. And we as groomers have to work around that through their entire lifetime. Like, we don't stop grooming dogs at 12 because, oh, he has that knee problem. You know what? Never mind. Like, that dog still needs baths. That dog still needs nail trimming. So we often are working with dogs who are experiencing discomfort. We know that a lot of dogs find grooming unpleasant. We know that they find it uncomfortable. And those are the behavior problems we see. Okay, so let me ask you, if you are finding something terribly unpleasant, and we just sit around going, no, 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 oh, which is even worse. Can I, let me stop here for a second, because one of my biggest pet peeves, if you're going to say no, and it's going to be a stern no, do not throw a question mark at the end of it. No, that little oh at the end. No, no. Like, that's a question. That's not even a stern no. I don't know what the purpose is. If you're going to do a no, do a no. Yeah, biggest pet peeve ever. All right. Right up there with crumbs in the butter. I know, I'm weird. But I want you to think about that stern no. Is that making you feel more comfortable? If this were you, is anything about being told how unacceptable your behavior is making you feel more comfortable? And we have to think about our goals here, because our goal is a dog who is calm, comfortable, and cooperative, a dog who thinks that grooming isn't that bad. Maybe they will never love it, okay? Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll always think it's tedious. It is tedious. It's a long process. Most dogs, the only time they've ever have anybody micromanaging them like that is at the groomer. Even if they go for an hour-long walk with their owners, it's a walk. It's different than an hour of focusing on a table in a tub with lots of equipment, right? It's tedious. It's tiring. It's physically demanding for them. And that stern no kind of backfires on us, okay? I was taught the stern no. I've done it a lot. And I got to say, if we start changing our mindset to how can I help this dog have a better experience? Why is this dog behaving this way? Then we have a much better chance of helping this dog learn to be good, right? That's the goal. Our goal is a dog who learns to be good. Just, I don't want him to bite me, or I don't want him to wiggle, is the dog training equivalent to owners saying, I don't want him to look like a poodle and I don't want him shaved. Well, what kind of haircut do you want? Well, not a poodle. Like, okay, we heard that. Well, I don't want him shaved. Okay, what are we doing with his ears today? You know, we have to ask all these questions to find out what the actual goal is. In dog grooming, we do that by asking what kind of haircut they want and then start talking about length in various areas and shapes. In dog training, we talk about what is your goal? What exactly do you want this dog to do on the table? Because if we don't, there are so many more options for mischief. There are so many other ways a dog could be doing it wrong. So much like there are so many ways you can give a haircut that owner doesn't like. Well, he's not shaved and he doesn't look like a poodle, so I did it exactly the way you wanted. We know that's not true. So if we want this dog to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative, suddenly the stern no doesn't make as much sense. And not because we're hurting a dog, but because we want them to understand how to behave and we want them to feel comfortable with the process. We want them to feel comfortable with us. How cool is that? So in the next part, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the stern no would do if it works, how it doesn't work sometimes, and that it's misunderstood.
I know that not everyone here wants to become a master groomer behavior specialist, but did you know that I offer other courses too? There's a 4-hour Groom Smart course to learn how to use the 3 C's in your day-to-day grooming. And there's Modern Behavior and Handling for Groomers. Those are both available through the Whole Pet Grooming Academy. They're 4-hour classes. You have 1 month access to complete those. And I will have links for those in the show notes.
So I think the stern no is something that gets used an awful lot. Many of us were taught that way. And that's what I was saying earlier. Many of us were taught that way. But if instead we're trying to focus on the why, I also want you to think about, there's in dog training, the humane hierarchy. And it's sort of a roadmap for when faced with a problem, when faced with a behavior issue that we do not want, that we want to change, the first thing we have to ask ourselves, and it's a roadmap, the first thing we ask ourselves is there a physical reason for this behavior? Is there a physical reason? So I want you to think about, maybe that's the dog with the sore foot that we're asking to stand on his sore foot while we work on the other one. And that's why the behavior is happening. Would the stern no address that? No, because now we have to think about, like, oh, wait a minute, that's making you sore. Let me see what I can do to alleviate that. What can I do to help you be physically more comfortable here? And if this is physically painful for me to be doing, how can I find a different way of doing it? Maybe, and I'm going to give you some examples. For some dogs, having somebody hold them in their arms so that their legs can just dangle and we can trim their nails in whatever position that dog wants to be in. For many dogs, that's really helpful. I know some people use the hammocks for that. I've only had limited experience with hammocks, but one dog thought it was great and another one thought it was horrific. So it has to, if we're going to use a tool like that, it has to help the dog feel more comfortable. If using a hammock actually helps the dog feel more comfortable so that their little legs can dangle and they can feel more comfortable while we move around them instead of them moving into positions we need them in, then go for it. Use it. It's all about helping the dog be more calm, comfortable, and cooperative. But if there is a physical reason for this behavior and we just started using no, we could miss that. We could really easily miss that. So first step, check and see if there is a physical reason. And some of those physical reasons could be, and throwing some examples out, it could be a puppy who is teething. You know, their gums are sore and we're working at their face and they're and sometimes they just get a little bit worried about it. They're teething, right? Their gums are sore, their mouth is sore, their face is sore. And sometimes that's the reason why we're seeing the behavior problem that we're seeing. Sometimes we forget about things like teething. Another thing about the physical body, we think about like the elderly dogs, but sometimes it's a dog with bad knee. You know, think about some of these dogs that we have with very twisted front legs, right? Asking them to stand on 3 legs puts a lot more pressure on one of those twisted front legs. Discomfort is often part of why a dog would have a behavior problem, and the stern no does not address that. So even if it was the thing you were taught to do first, I instead invite you to think first about, okay, is there a physical reason why this dog is being like this? Second thing that we go through with the humane hierarchy is if there's a behavior problem, some behavior that we do not want to have to continue, what can we do to change this environment? Is there something in the environment that we can change? Now, let me give you some examples for that, because instead of going directly to stern no, what if we said, I think what I'm going to do is book this dog for a quieter time of day. This dog is overwhelmed by the amount of animals in this room. If that's what's getting to them, if the environment is just way too much, maybe they are not a dog to bring in on a Saturday, right? Maybe they are, nice couple quiet dogs on a Wednesday afternoon. think about ways that we can make that experience easier for them by changing the environment. If it's a matter of how much noise, maybe a happy hoodie is enough for them to feel more comfortable with that noise. And I would consider that something in the environment. Like, okay, how can I decrease the sound level for you for this? Maybe it's a matter of using a dryer brush on their head instead of the high velocity dryer. That would be something environmental. That's me switching to a different tool. Maybe the dog prefers nail grinding instead of nail trimming. Think about all of the tools that we could maybe switch up and customize the experience for this dog. No two dogs are alike. They all have their own opinions, just like we do. So if we start looking at, okay, first, was there a health issue, a physical reason why this dog is behaving like this? Second, is there anything around me that I can change to make this easier for this dog today while we teach something new? And that's step 3. Step 3 is when we start getting into positive reinforcement. Step 3 is when we start getting into, can I teach you something new using positive reinforcement? And maybe that is quietly standing on a table. Maybe that is hopping into a tub on your own instead of trying to thrash and move away. See, the goal setting is a little bit different. Stand on a table quietly. That different than don't flail, don't thrash, don't alligator roll. Stand on the table quietly would be a goal. Jump into the tub or put the front paws up and let me boost your back end into a tub. Whatever that is, if we can also now at step 3 of the humane hierarchy, teach that with positive reinforcement. Now, I know that's a lot of stuff, but there are more steps in the humane hierarchy. This is a very short podcast, so I'm going to stop at those. But let's talk about what positive reinforcement really is. And here's your very, very quick tutorial on what's called the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. The 4 quadrants. So first we have reinforcement. Reinforcement means the behavior stays the same or increases. So you see a behavior you really like, and it's going to increase or stay the same if it's being reinforced. Reinforcement. Behavior increases or stays the same. That could be quietly standing on a table. Ooh, hey, that's a great goal. Punishment is when a behavior decreases or ends. Decreases or ends is punishment. It's not about the emotions. It's not about how we feel about it. It's about how the behavior changes. And if it changes at all. If the behavior does not change, you could have just been adding something pleasant or something unpleasant. You could have just changed what you're doing and having no effect on the behavior at all. So what's positive and negative? Positive means something added, like algebra, something added, a plus sign, added, positive. Negative, minus sign, like in algebra, something removed. So often I'm hearing people talk about the stern no as it's negative reinforcement. And it is not. It is not. It is positive punishment if and only if it actually decreases or ends the behavior. I know, that's a little tricky, and it's a short podcast, so we're getting into it really quickly. If you do a stern no, you're adding something. You're adding the no. You've added something. And if the behavior decreases or ends, it was a punishment. Positive, added, punishment, decreased behavior. Okay, it's written up in grooming textbooks incorrectly everywhere. So just so you know, this is exactly what it means. But let me ask you something. If there was a physical problem for this dog, do we really think that that's a good way to decrease that behavior? If we just ignore that physical problem and give that stern no? I don't think so. I don't think so. And it's not about, is it mean? It's about it doesn't really address the issue. The issue is important. But I'm going to say, after many, many years of doing stern no and being in the room with someone who does lots of stern no, it usually is someone who is saying this over and over and over again and seeing no result. So let me ask you, if the reason for the behavior problem is that a dog finds grooming unpleasant, uncomfortable, and or scary, and our actions, our way of solving it, is to incorporate more unpleasant, uncomfortable, or scary, if that behavior is not changing, we're just making it worse. We are just making this more uncomfortable, more unpleasant by being unpleasant, right? Frankly, the stern no is unpleasant. If it worked, that would be why it worked, because it's unpleasant. So this isn't a judgment call about whether or not it's mean. It's about, is it serving your purpose? So for the people who really are convinced that that's the first thing you try, does it serve your purpose? Do you usually do one stern no and your problem is resolved? And for some dogs, in some instances, that could be true. And that is a perfectly fine use of the stern no. However, for so many, it's something that gets chanted over and over and over again. And the groomer gets frustrated and the dog is becoming more frustrated. And we start saying things like spoiled, untrained, naughty, and that this dog just needs to be trained. What's wrong with him, right? Because it's just becoming increasingly unpleasant. Instead of looking at, did the behavior decrease or end or not? Did it have absolutely no effect on the behavior at all? And sometimes that's true of positive reinforcement also. If I add a cookie, if that dog is not actually increasing the behavior I wanted, maybe it was just adding something pleasant, and the dog has no idea why. Okay, that's why we really have to look at, is the behavior changing in the direction we thought we were trying to make it change? So the stern no, like I said, it's really polarizing. There are some who think that it's animal abuse, and there are some who think it's abusive to never use it. But its purpose is to get a behavior to decrease or end by incorporating unpleasantness. And my argument is grooming is already unpleasant, uncomfortable, and or scary. And I would like to avoid incorporating more unpleasantness. All right, so that's the big takeaway this week. And it's not a judgment call about people being mean or people being wishy-washy. It's about, is the behavior changing?
Hey, Creating Great Grooming Dogs family. You know I care about all of you and want to support you in your work, and that's exactly why we built the Scholar Lounge at the Whole Pet Grooming Academy. For $47 a month, roughly the cost of a gallon of decent shampoo, you'll receive live weekly coaching calls, resources, lessons, a community of like-minded groomers who want to raise the bar just like you. And if you're one of our students, it's included while you're in the classes. So links are in the show notes, or you can go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com/sponsors and know that that is a way to get off of Facebook. I mean, isn't that kind of what we all want?